Right, to help us unpack the latest developments, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Mootaz Ahmadein Khalil, former permanent representative of Egypt to the United Nations in New York. Ambassador Khalil, good morning to you, sir. And let me start by asking, reports say that talks in Islamabad lasted about 21 hours, but collapsed. After definitely the US said that Iranian team did not have the authority to make a deal. In your view, what really caused the failure of those talks?
Good morning, Mrs. Mousselhi, and thank you for having me. First, it is very naive to think that only one round of talks is enough to reach a substantive and sustainable agreement. In general, usually, experts do the negotiations for quite a bit of time, and then politicians come to sign and take the credit. This has not happened in this case. Then, of course, second, it is very funny to listen in your report that VP Vance has mentioned that Iran is moving the goalposts. In reality, the United States is moving the goalposts. Israel is moving the goalposts. If you see that the original deal included Lebanon, the US has acknowledged that. And then after a phone call between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel, things changed, and Israel bombarded Lebanon and killed more than 300 innocent civilians in Lebanon. This is moving the goalposts. But again, the Iranians have mentioned that excessive demands and unacceptable demands that have not been achieved in the negotiations before the war, not again through the war, were trying to be forced down the throat of the Iranians during the negotiations. I see that Vice President Vance approached the talks in the same Trump usual manner. He was mentioning that the United States has presented the best and final offer, and the Iranians have to accept it. To me, I mean, this looks like he's selling a washing machine, not approaching political negotiations. This is the real reason why the talks have failed.
Right. Now, from what we're following here, that the United States has imposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports under orders from US President Donald Trump. Is this mainly a pressure tactic, or could it lead to a wider military confrontation?
I think this is another card that President Trump is playing in order to exert pressure on Iran. I would not be surprised if the talks resume. I believe that the ceasefire is going to hold for the coming week, and it may probably be extended. This is the usual Trump tactics. He used to escalate on Saturdays and Sundays during the weekend, and then de-escalate or deflate or tackle away on Tuesday or Wednesday. And meanwhile, he's achieving financial benefits by on stocks and the oil prices. This has happened maybe 5 times during this war. So I think the ceasefire will hold, and maybe there will be another round of negotiations, and the ceasefire might be extended.
Right. Your Excellency, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who is reported to be joining the Israel-Lebanon talks, said that Iran must make a clear commitment not to develop a nuclear weapon. How central is the nuclear issue in these negotiations, and could it block any future agreement from your point of view?
I believe that the nuclear issue has been portrayed as the center of the negotiations. But in reality, Mrs. Mousselhi, the whole thing is about regime change. This is 47 years endeavor. It is very obvious from the different statements by President Trump and the different American politicians. The nuclear issue, the missile issue, the alliances of between Iran and its proxies in the region, all these are excuses and pretexts in order to keep the pressure on the Iranian government until it collapses, and to another way and excuse to put on sanctions, blockades, and so on. What we have seen so far is that the nuclear issue is resolved because there is an over 30 years old fatwa by Imam Khomeini that prohibits acquiring nuclear weapon. If we talk about the highly enriched uranium, Iran has agreed before to keep the level of enrichment under 4%. What led it to go beyond that was that the United States, under President Trump during his first tenure, has withdrawn from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Third, the highly enriched uranium is unaccounted for. It is probably buried under the rubble that followed the bombardment of the nuclear facilities in last June during Operation Midnight Hammer. So all this is nonsensical. These are only excuses to keep the pressure on the Iranian regime in order to hopefully, from the point of view of the United States and the West and Israel and maybe some countries in the region, to try to force the regime out and help or encourage internal dissension.
Now, Ambassador Khalil, Tehran has threatened severe action against approaching military vessels. What mechanisms exist to prevent miscalculation in such a tense maritime environment?
I think that the dialogue between the United States and Iran has not stopped. It is undergoing as we speak through the proxies, through Pakistan, through Turkey, probably through Egypt as well, and maybe other mediators. And the rhetoric is understandable from both sides. Both sides are threatening of dire consequences, but I think both sides need at least to keep the ceasefire until something major happens. And if the dialogue is ongoing, if there is another round of talks, if the ceasefire is extended, there is no interest from the United States point of view or the Iranian point of view to escalate right now. But of course, if the United States starts bombarding the infrastructure in Iran or oil production facilities, or on the other side, Iran strikes back at the Gulf countries or the American military bases in the Gulf countries, or the American naval assets in the coasts in front of Iran, that might cause escalation, but I doubt that this will happen within the coming couple of weeks.
Right. We're now joined from Islamabad by Ambassador Asif Durrani, former ambassador of Pakistan to Iran. And Mr. Durrani, news just erupted that Pakistan or Islamabad would host another round of talks, and that the United States and Iran agreed to those talks. What do you have on those developments that were just reported a few minutes ago?
Well, I think that's natural because the first round one should not have expected would yield much results, but at least it set the tone, it set the stage for the talks. And you have seen Vice President J.D. Vance's statement when although he talked about the failure of the talks, still he talked about the substantive nature of the talks that held. And then from the Iranian side, you heard Foreign Minister Arakshi that they were very near to an agreement. And then the Iranian Foreign Office spokesperson who also talked about the issues which the two sides had almost agreed. But here, I think I tend to agree with the idea that basic agenda of the talks from the American side is dictated by Israel, and which is why that these stalemate continue. And one important thing which needs to be understood is that on nuclear issue, which Vice President J.D. Vance in fact projected, actually has been resolved in the JCPOA, about 3.67% enrichment of uranium, and more importantly, Iran's declaration that it will not pursue the nuclear weapons route. And more importantly, since Israel is dictating the agenda, Israel itself is an undeclared nuclear weapon state. So it is, I think, not only Iran, but other states of the region, they should make a strong pitch about Israel's nuclear program. And already there is a resolution pending in the UN General Assembly about declaring Middle East as nuclear weapon-free zones. So it is a cherry picking on the part of the United States. And that's not going to sell because ultimately the states of the region, they would ultimately come around to the idea that it can't be a one-way traffic, and they'll have to accommodate the issues which are being faced by the countries. And for that, and then in the current war, you have seen that the United States' image of the sole superpower has also shattered, and so is Israel's invincibility that it built through the Iron Dome, but that was penetrated by Iran. So therefore, I think Iran enjoys a strategic advantage, which the United States and Israel don't enjoy. Yes.
Right. One of the sticking points also was the Strait of Hormuz. And that was one talk that has hindered the ongoing negotiations. Now, how serious is the escalation, the existing escalation, and how do you think it would reflect on the upcoming talks?
Well, the Strait of Hormuz turned out to be a strategic advantage to Iran during the war. Earlier, you have seen that it was never blocked, it was never used by Iran for any purposes, even during Iran-Iraq war. So, and then as soon as these issues are resolved, especially with regard to Iran's nuclear program, which Iran agrees, and it is to be the United States which has to agree and which has to remove sanctions against Iran. You can't be selective by saying that Iran should be accepting everything, and in return Iran would get nothing. That's not going to happen, and I think the world should also take notice of this. Yes.
Right. Pakistan has offered to host another round of talks, and it seems like both sides have agreed, or this is what reports have said. How do you view Pakistan's role in bringing both sides back to the negotiating table together and in resolving these sticking points?
I think it's because Pakistan enjoys the trust of both parties. So we have very good relations with the United States, and of course we have very good relations with Iran, and Iran is our next door neighbor. And it is also more, it has to do with Iran, which reposes trust in Pakistan. And I think that also then makes Pakistan a better candidate to be a mediator. And therefore, when we had the first round, I think there's no harm in having the second round in Pakistan. And hopefully that would lead the parties to an amicable solution. Yes.
Right. Back to you, Ambassador Khalil. Ambassador Khalil, the United States is said to facilitate direct talks between Israel and Lebanon. And so far, it was said that Marco Rubio would attend or would take part in those meetings. How important are those negotiations for reducing tensions in Lebanon?
In theory, talks are important to reduce tensions, but again, the two sides are very far apart. Israel is looking for the disarmament of Hezbollah and a peace agreement with Lebanon that would guarantee the presence of Israel in a security zone deep inside the Lebanese border, plus the freedom of movement of the Israeli army in the whole area south of the Litani River, and the monitoring by Israel of the efforts of the Lebanese army to disarm Hezbollah. These are the 3 points of a plan that has been developed by Ron Dermer, the former Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs and the former right hand of the Prime Minister of Israel, regarding the talks. On the other side, Lebanon is looking for first a ceasefire that would lead to second the withdrawal of Israel from the territory of Lebanon. And these two commodities are not on the table for these negotiations. So I do not expect that much is going to happen, but the Lebanese are willing to try. In my opinion, without resistance against the Israeli invasion, nothing is going to happen. And also by excluding any party that would support Lebanon, like the Arab countries or even France, that is part of the Western camp that is sympathetic to Lebanon, although they support Israel, all these have been excluded, France and the Arab countries. So we should not expect much of these talks.
Right. Back to Ambassador Durrani, and Pakistan has earlier suggested that Lebanon was included in the ceasefire, while on the other hand, the United States and Israel dismissed that claim. How do you think the outcome of today's the Israeli-Lebanese negotiations would reflect on the upcoming negotiations between on the U.S.-Iran conflict? And do you think it would really affect the rising tensions?
I think Israeli attacks on Lebanon is not going to help the talks between Iran and U.S. And yes, our Prime Minister had very specifically said that U.S. had agreed for the ceasefire, overall ceasefire, that included Lebanon. Well, it's not something new. The United States has backtracked, and so have Israel so many times. And you have seen that these 2 times war, one last year, 12 days, it was initiated by Israel, followed by the United States, and that too at a time when nuclear talks were at its advanced stage. And second time, now that on 28th February, when again Israel initiated attacks followed by the United States, again the nuclear talks were at its advanced stage. So in a way that Iran was dished twice. So these things, even with regard to Iran, I tend to agree with Ambassador Khalil that there's little hope about its success, because Israel is following salami tactics, and they want to gradually capture the territory, occupy the territory, which they have done it. So they will move in various directions where they can capture the territory. So I think the situation would be serious in the coming future.
Right. Ambassador Khalil, Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem has previously rejected the planned talks between Lebanon and Israel, but now the talks are to start. How do you think that those talks would affect the upcoming negotiations? Do you think that they have engaged in the talks because of the news that came out that Iran will be engaging in new round of talks with the United States? And how do you think those two issues reflect on each other?
Well, first, this offer of talking directly to Israel was presented by President Joseph Aoun of Lebanon more than 2 weeks ago. Israel had not responded until this news about the talks that took place in Islamabad broke out, and President Trump called Benjamin Netanyahu in order to convince him to stop firing at Lebanon. So the compromise was that there will be no ceasefire in Lebanon, but Israel would agree to the offer by the Lebanese to have direct talks. That was one. And also there was an agreement to stop bombarding Beirut and leaving Israel to keep bombarding the South Lebanon. So there is an impact, but again, I think that the two issues are being separated because Israel and the United States want that. Iran does not want, but Iran has little choice, and they keep putting pressure, but the issues are more separate than joined at this stage.
Ambassador Durrani, now that Pakistan is hosting another round of talks, hopefully, how do you think it would be dealing with the sticking points or the points that hindered a deal, the previous round?
I think we shouldn't forget that United States could not achieve its objectives through military means. So these talks are a face-saving device for the United States. So while it may keep the pressure on Iran and it may indulge in maximalist positions it can display, but it also needs an off-ramp. And I think after dilly-dallying, United States and Iran would come around to some agreement. However, it's a big however, that there is a likelihood of talks being sabotaged by Israel. Yes.
Yes, but let me here understand exactly the sticking points in the previous round of negotiations, so we understand exactly what will be coming in this upcoming stage.
Sorry, come again? Sorry.
Again. So we need to understand, or if you please further illustrate on the sticking points in the previous rounds of talks, so we can understand what are we supposed to be expecting at this upcoming stage.
I think number one is nuclear, to which by and large there is agreement, because this agreement had to be from the Iranian side, and Iran has declared it is not pursuing the nuclear weapons route. However, now the new conditions which United States wants to impose is that Iran has to forego anything nuclear with regard to having any enriched uranium development, even if it is below 3.67% or 3.67%. So this is something, an unusual demand, to which United States cannot say it because it would be sheer violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, to which Iran is a signatory, and Iran has the right to have access to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes. This is sticking point number one. Second is, from Iran's perspective, the sanctions which have been imposed. While UN sanctions have lapsed, it is United States sanctions, and which are more stringent, that and the freezing of Iranian assets for the past many decades, that needs to be resolved. And third sticking point one has to look at is the assurances from the United States that it would not resort to military means. And with regard to Strait of Hormuz, of course, Iran will have to give assurances that it will not put pressure, or it will not use Strait of Hormuz as a tool to affect normal shipment of goods and services, and it would allow innocent passage. So these are the sticking points where I think they have to come around to an understanding. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Khalil, at this critical stage, how important is the role of regional and international actors in easing tensions across the wider conflict in the region? We're speaking about regional, and the international partners?
First, regional actors have no choice but to keep trying to bring the two parties at the table because regional actors have vital interests that are threatened by the persistence of this war. The only remark I have is that I agree completely with Ambassador Durrani regarding that the mediators are offering an off-ramp for both sides and especially the United States. So maybe they should deal with this mediation as if they are presenting a service for the United States, not as they are just trying to put pressure on Iran. And I am very satisfied that Pakistan does this and understands this very well, but the problem is that the United States does not understand that. Second, regarding international actors, I believe that there is a need for more active involvement by Russia and China in the talks in order to provide balance regarding the United States, which is a dominant power in the international system. So it needs a counterpart that has enough weight or similar weight in the international system in order to force the United States to take the talks seriously. Europe as well can contribute, and they are actually doing that by not accepting to be dragged into the war and not participating in the blockade. The participation of international actors, is extremely important in order for the talks to reach results.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Durrani, besides Pakistan's role as a mediator, what broader role could it play in preventing the conflict from further escalating into a wider regional war?
I think Pakistan's outreach to other countries of the region which have given air bases, I think Pakistan has been involved with them also. And of course, Egypt and Turkey, they have been valuable partners. Pakistan, together with Egypt and Turkey, in fact, initiated this entire process in which Saudi foreign minister was also there. So I think the quadrilateral foreign ministers meeting laid the foundation of these talks and these mediation efforts. And so it is, I think it would be, again, quite advisable that we adopt this regional route and prevail upon the parties that peace in the region is only possible if they take concrete measures. And number one, they have to extend the present ceasefire further so that when the negotiations are taking place, so those are not disrupted with the resumption of war. Yes.
Right. Ambassador Khalil, and briefly, please, with the circumstances and the developments we're seeing and following, do you think diplomacy continuing behind the doors is moving closer towards a solution or towards a wider regional confrontation?
No, I think the wider regional confrontation has already happened. So now is the turn of diplomacy. But for diplomacy to succeed, I think that all the issues have to be addressed. The issue of Israel and the issue of Iran in order to have peace in the Arab world. Because if we resolve one issue, the other threat to the security of the region will remain. And a third issue that is very important is that we have to reach agreement and concrete steps towards disarmament, nuclear disarmament, and as well addressing the missile capabilities of all countries in the region, not only Iran, Israel as well. And there should be mutual understandings between Iran and the Gulf countries for non-interference and non-aggression from both sides. This is the key to achieving a sustainable result.
Right, that was His Excellency Ambassador Mootaz Ahmadein Khalil, former permanent representative of Egypt to the United Nations in New York, and Ambassador Asif Durrani, former ambassador of Pakistan to Iran. We thank you both, gentlemen, for the valuable insights.